Welcome back to another edition of the Talking National League podcast, episode 48, I believe it is, on this Thursday evening. Of course, it's our end of season Q&A. We've been talking about this for the last couple of days. Myself and Paul will be answering all your questions tonight on the Vanarama National League this season. We'll be reflecting on the season, talking everything playoffs, and a bit of talk as well about the upcoming season as well in the National League. But yeah, a lot to talk about tonight, like I've just stated, but those playoffs were something special, weren't they? Well, I wouldn't say something special, but a bit of a shock, weren't they, some of those playoff results?
Oh, without a doubt. If you look at across the National League, I think there was one home team won, didn't they, out of the 3 or 4? So, yeah, it was. There's always, those teams that come in 6th and 7th generally come in on a bit of a sort of a winning streak or good form. It was always going to happen with Boreham Wood and Bromley, because they're very, very difficult side to predict on, aren't they, Luke? They are very resolute. Bromley are quite full of energy, very athletic. My outstanding memory of Bromley whenever I've watched them is that they just never give up. And a bit like Boreham Wood, they've let very few goals in, really, and because of that, they've always got a chance to win a game. On the night, Barnet, from their perspective, I don't think they performed as well as they could, and they let 2 simple goals in. Last night, the Bromley game, that could have gone either way. Like you predicted, it could have gone to penalties. It was looking like it was going all that way. They've nicked one off a set piece, a well-played set piece that Deji Elawere's sort of nipped in and scored, and then they've got something to hold on to. So, yeah, really, really sort of, they were tough games, weren't they? Good to watch, but real tough, and not a massive amount of football. Not ones for the purists, right? But those National League fans would have appreciated what they watched over the last 2 nights.
Yeah, they were certainly interesting games with both away teams winning. Remember to get your questions in, guys, and remember to like and subscribe. We'll quickly just read the chat, see who's in at the moment. Ash, who's an Oldham fan, said, hello, welcome to the stream. Another Oldham fan. 3 Oldham fans all at once. Kez is in, and then another Oldham fan there. He's also donated once again to the channel, so thank you very much. You're going to have to stop doing this because I have no idea how to react to these donations, but all I can say is thank you very much, and I do really appreciate it. A Bromley fan, I think, is Bromley winning the playoffs. I think I see similarities with them in the Grimsby of last season. That side who sort of sneaked into the playoffs. I think there were someone read a stat out. I think it might have been Tom. 9 points off the playoffs with 10 games to go. They've sneaked in, and a side that's going into form into the playoffs. And I wouldn't say just happy to be in the playoffs, because every club has aspirations to get promoted this season in those playoff places, but there's less pressure on them compared to other clubs. I think with your likes of Notts and Chesterfields, it'll work in their favour, and they're certainly going to be a dark horse, because I don't think we look back at Grimsby and thought they were the second best side in that division that season. But I tell you what, they were resilient. They had that never say die attitude. Bromley came from behind against a good working side. And I don't think Bromley were the better team on the night, but I'll tell you something, Bromley were. They were definitely more physical. They were better in the air. And that's how Bromley play. They spoil games. They spoil these games, like I think they will against Chesterfield. I think they'll not let Chesterfield play how they want to play. And that'll ruin it. And I say ruin it, I mean it as in the fact that it'll work in Bromley's favour, and Chesterfield won't be able to play their usual type of football too. We had a few more people coming in. Evening all, who's a Notts County fan. You'll be hoping you can get through on Sunday. Hello, Luke. I'm looking forward to the final. Yeah, there'll be a lot of talk about that tonight. Remember to get your questions in, guys, as well. Mentality is key for Notts. We've been incredible this season, but it means nothing if our mentality isn't right to go again in the playoffs. As seems to the teams with momentum who sneak in normally get quite far. I do think it's harsh for teams in the playoffs, though, with how close to the end of the season the playoff games are. Yeah, such a quick turnaround, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, you can't please everyone, can you? Because, I should imagine clubs would turn around and say, if you give me a 7 to 10 day break with no football, they're going to moan that there's no football and they're having to kick around for so long before they play. I mean, it didn't work in Woking's favour last night. It didn't have Jim Kellerman. It didn't have Reece Brown, their talisman, that has really showed up well since signing from the Stones. And I think that really affected them. And I think I saw a tweet saying they sort of ran out of a few players, really. So there's no happy medium. You're going to please some clubs, you're not going to please others. Chesterfield and Notts are going to be sort of kicking around for a week, being full time. That's probably useful to them, and get some players back who may be having niggles and knocks. Whereas, those guys that have to go into the eliminators, that's a lot of football straight off the back of the season to play Tuesday, Sunday, week off, and then get to the final. But, the likes of Bromley and Boreham Wood now are looking at they are 2 games from the EFL. Now, if you said to them at the beginning of the season, we'll give you 2 games to be in the EFL, they'd have snatch your hand off. So, I think they're probably pleased with that momentum. It's those teams that lose will probably say, it was too much football at the end of the day. You're not going to please everybody, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it, with this? I know, like, people will complain as well about there only being 1 leg, but I think as a neutrals, we do prefer that because it makes the game more open, and anything can happen. I know when Halifax lost to Chesterfield, I was saying, well, if it was over 2 legs, I know we was at home, but I'd be confident we could potentially get back into that game, and we probably wouldn't have gone 2-0 down in the first place. But it's all about opinions, and not everyone's going to agree with everything. But let's have a look at some of the matches then. We won't just be talking about the playoffs, by the way, guys. We'll be talking about teams next season, for those who've just joined us, everything to do with the National League this season. So please remember to get your questions in. So we'll go down to the playoffs, and we'll have a look at how at the games that we'll be looking at. So let's start off with, as we were on the topic of this, let's start off with the Bromley v Woking game then. So, of course, Woking did take the lead. I do sort of feel like that lead was a bit undeserved. Would you agree with that? I think it was through the run of play, to be honest. I thought they were clinical, but I thought prior to that, Bromley were knocking on the door to score themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at Ince has scored a good goal. He's taken his opportunities as off the rebound from the set piece. And for the rest of the half, Jaska Lynham's kept him in the game a little bit. When you see Andy Woodman, when he talks on the TV interview yesterday on BT Sport after the game, he felt as long as they stayed in the game at 1-0, 0-0, that they were going to do well in the second half. And that's always a trait of Bromley's, because they have got youth, because they have got that exuberance, because they have got that energy. They're always going to be knocking on the door. And, when you've got someone like Michael Cheek up top who plays with experience with everyone around him who's got that youth, it's a good blend. And I think you're right. Woking were the better team in the second half, but you've got to defend well in your box in these games. And they didn't defend the header or that long throw particularly well. As Andy Woodman said, they've learned to play off the second knock, not off the original throw. And due to that, Desi Elawere scored a goal. He's a 19-year-old kid on loan from Charlton. He seemed to be enjoying it. And they then, as I said, they've got something to hold on to. And they are very, very resolute. And Woking just didn't have the quality to break them down when they needed it.
No, they certainly didn't. Even at half-time, I think it was 1-0, wasn't it, at half-time? And I actually did think after that second half, once the second half had begun, it was quite end-to-end. I think there was a chance for Woking to get a second, and it could have been a different story. But Bromley were knocking on the door, to be fair to them. I know might have been in the first half, I can't exactly remember, but I know the keeper, there was a shot to Michael Cheek, he had a heavy touch, the keeper spilt it, and then that young Bromley player, I can't remember his name, he was an 18-year-old who was playing at right back, I think had a shot and it were blocked. But Bromley were knocking on the door, and then they finally did get a bit of, I wouldn't say luck as it was a penalty, but they got that penalty and managed to get that equaliser. And there's no one else in the league that you'd be more confident about taking a penalty than someone like Michael Cheek, who's been here and done it. And obviously he got that equaliser for them. And then since that goal, when they got that equaliser, it just gave them a lot of confidence, and Bromley managed to get that winning goal through that youngster. And I think on the night, Bromley were probably the better team. And this is what I mean. Playoffs are one-off games. Other people probably disagree with this because home advantage is a key factor in any game of football. But honestly, in the playoffs, I don't think that makes too much of a difference. There was 11 points between the two sides. Somewhere like Woking especially, It's different going to places like your Chesterfields, your Notts Counties, where you're getting 7,000-8,000 fans behind them for the away team. It's a little bit more intimidating, and that's why I think it could be another factor why in the next games it'll be a little bit more, well, it'll be a lot more difficult for Bromley and Bournemouth to get something there. But I don't think it makes too much of a difference in the playoffs. And Woking reminds me of the Halifax side of last season, who were third for the majority of the second half of the campaign, and then at the last hurdle failed and slipped up, and Chesterfield overtook them, having to play that extra game can be a little frustrating, and a lot of pressure on them as well against the Bromley side that came to spoil the game. And Bromley managed to get the win, and this is the problem, isn't it? Is with maybe one leg is the fact that it comes down to one game, and 11 points. I think Woking got 4 points off them this season. No, I think 4.6 points. It was something like that this season. But I don't think Bromley will be too bothered about that now, and that 11-point gap now that they've got through to go to somewhere like Chesterfield. Would you?
No, it's the home advantage, away advantage in one-off games. I think you're right. Last night there was probably 5,000 at Woking, but it was probably an even split on what fans were where. Whereas you're going to go to Notts or Chesterfield, there's going to be 8, 7, 8, 9,000, 10,000 in one end, and sort of 1,000 or 2 in the other, possibly at the most. If at all. So yeah, it's going to be really difficult for Bromley. But if these kids play with no fear and they go there and just think, well, it's a one-off game, treat it as a semi-final, treat it as a final. Doesn't matter who they're playing against. They've got as good a chance as any. As good a chance as any, especially the way they set up and the way they play. And as Andy Woodman said last night, he likes to see how much they're enjoying it and giving them those experiences. And they'll want to get onto Wembley. Those kids will want to play at Wembley. Any of these teams. So. And maybe that promised land of being a professional footballer in the professional league, even though they're probably most of them full time. To say they can play in the EFL, what a carrot for them all. So it's going to be really tough on Sunday for either team, and hard to predict.
How do you expect Woking to react to this now? Because it's been a long campaign, it's been a good campaign. They've made a lot of steps moving forward. But it almost feels like, we're back to step one again. We're having to rebuild for next season now. And we haven't even been able to challenge one of the, I wouldn't say top sides because it's top 7, but we haven't been able to challenge one of those sides that have finished higher above us to get into the EFL. We've lost to a side that finished 11 points below us. How do they react to that now?
I don't know for sure. I don't know much about Woking and what their fans and their expectations are, but they only went full time last summer. They brought Darren Sarll in, excellent manager at this level, recruited very well. Lost some of those players who didn't want to go full time. They possibly are probably slightly ahead of their curve. Would they have expected to be challenging for the playoffs in their first year as full time? Possibly. I don't know. But you'd probably think actually there's that period of settling in, getting new players. Yeah, a little bit like Halifax were with having a change of manager late on in the summer. Change of circumstance. It's always going to be that. It's going to be difficult for them. So I think they're probably slightly ahead of their curve and their expectations. If they can keep the bulk of their squad, other players who come into the league see that they're a well set up club. They get it's a decent ground to play at. I think Darren Sarll will gain better players and will improve his squad. And I think, again, they'll be looking at challenging for those playoffs next season.
I have to say the recruitment in that summer was exceptional from Woking. And I think they are definitely going places. They're making steps moving forward. This is I think this is a major pushback because of how good of a season that they've had. But what I will say is if they can keep the squad together, which honestly, I think they can keep 3/4 at least of this squad together for next season. I can't see why they can't be challenging next season, especially for Notts County or Chesterfield gets promoted. They add to this squad, they keep Darren Sarll in charge, and like I mentioned, keep this squad together. I can't see why Woking can't get into the Football League in the near future. It's just going to be interesting to see how they react to this summer. I think working fans will be a bit disappointed, and it's very frustrating and very tiring when you have a full season in the division, have such a successful year. You remember all those great games where you think, whoa, what a point there, that was brilliant. And then it comes down to one game that you slip up in. It's certainly very, very, very disappointing, I'd have to say, if you're a working fan. But I do think they can come back stronger. But it's going to be interesting to see how Bromley do perform in the semi-finals of the playoffs, if they can cause an upset for the Chesterfield game. We'll have a look at the live chat. Please remember to get your questions in the live chat about everything to do with the National League this season. Also remember to retweet this online if you can, or share it to try and get as many people in the stream as possible. Someone said, evening, Luke, welcome to the stream. A Notts fan came in here with a stat. Just, if it can load, there we go. Just a little stat. Notts have only conceded 12 goals out of 23 games at home, the best outside of the Prem. Mitchell falls over everywhere he goes. That's a Dorking fan. Got a feeling Bournemouth could snatch it on pens, considering they are a tough team to break down. Plus, Notts have missed some key penalties this season, even aside from the Wrexham runs. I'm going 2-1 Chesterfield, only giving Bromley one, as Cheek always gets a pen. We've had, what happened to Notts' best players if they don't go up? Surely some of them are poached by other clubs. What would your opinion be on this? Because we know Notts have a lot of financial backing this season, but surely when you've got the striker that scored the most goals in the top 5 divisions this season, in Langstaff, it's going to be very difficult to keep hold of someone like him. And then the best player in the league in Ruben Rodriguez as well.
Yeah, I agree. If they don't get promoted, Luke Williams has got a real tough summer of selling to these lads to say, stick with the process, stick with the club. We will get you promoted and we'll get you in the Football League. On the other hand, Langstaff's come from the National League system, didn't pull up any trees until last year, and he's gone absolutely, through the roof this year. Is that not to say that Notts can go and find that sort of player again? So I don't think it's a conversation that Luke Williams and the board will want to have with any of these players, the likes of Rodriguez, John Bostock, obviously Langstaff. I don't know how many are on contracts for the next 2 years, because for next season or season after, that obviously plays into the hands of Notts, because they can ask for fees. But if someone higher up that chain comes to the likes of Langstaff or Rodriguez, one, would they want to stand in their way? I'd like to think they wouldn't. And two, if there's so much money on offer, talking sort of 6 figures, you've got to entertain that and ask the question of whether do we sell them or not. So there's a whole number of variables that will come to fruition after Sunday. But personally, I think I see Notts going up, and Langstaff will stay with them. But even if they go in the EFL, it's not to say they won't move, because if someone higher up that pyramid wants them, they're going to get their heads turned. Notts might want a bit of cash. Who knows?
We always feel like with clubs like your Notts, your Chesterfields, once upon a time, your Wrexham, I think now they are financially superior, that they could keep anyone that they wanted to be honest, within reason. But we think of these big clubs in this league, they're not going to lose their best players. But we forget that there's even bigger clubs further up the football pyramid at the moment. And someone like Langstaff, if a championship club comes in, which I think there will be some definitely sniffing around who wouldn't mind taking a punt on him this season, if one of those sides comes in for him, or maybe even, and this is a big maybe, a Premiership side comes in for him, which I don't think he'd be out of the question if a Premiership side had a look at him. It could be an opportunity of too good to turn down for someone like Langstaff, to be honest. And someone like Rodriguez as well. Some say he's been the best player in this division this season. He's definitely been up there, and he's a very, very quality player, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see how they react this summer. get the charger. But next we got we've got only four of Bromley starting 11 against Woking were in the team against Oldham on Saturday. So fresh pair of legs as well. Yeah. Moving on, then we've got. Is this? Let's see what this is. Is this the? Not sure what that is, to be honest. And then Luke, Luke, are you doing a vlog on Sunday for the Chesterfield game? I'm hoping to be fair, I'm hoping to do a vlog and hopefully catch some Chesterfield and Bromley fans on the podcast to get their opinions. 15,500 home tickets sold for the Notts game. Yeah, incredible for this level. Reckon Notts County will win without Ashmore. Yeah, it's a question about him. Do you think he won't be playing from what you saw on television?
Well, I don't think even he knows, does he? He wasn't sure what the problem was. Luke Garrard seemed to suggest that they've got no other goalkeeper, so they could get someone in on loan. I understand the rules are that they can sign someone from the National League and below. I think they'll try their very, very best to stick him between the sticks. Even if he can't kick, someone else can take goal kicks, etc. But he's a quality goalkeeper, and he really came into his own the other night, didn't he? Made some excellent saves. So I don't think they'll want to upset the team too much. But clearly, if he's really not able to play, it'd be interesting to see if they go out and try and sign for the 1 or 2 games that might get him into the Football League.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if he does start. But he certainly was great, wasn't he, the other night against Barnet? Even when he got injured, to carry on how he did, I thought was great from him. Next, we've got Woking will trickle down the league next season. It's all about opinion, but I disagree with that. I think they've got a lot of financial backing behind them, but to be fair, what do I know? I was back in Solihull up there at the start of the season, and look how they've tailed off. Free tickets and huge discounts for the kids, the under-21s through Dale up. Then we've got half of them are Forest fans, and then we'll have a look, see if there's any more that have come in. Mark White is obsessed with Oldham. Let's have a look, see. Yeah, I think we have got to the bottom then. So we will move on. We will have a look at some more of the games. But before we do that, I do want to have a look at this tier system. But Paul, it's up to you. Do you want to have a look at the tier system and do that now? Or do you want to have a look at the Barnet v Bournemouth game and react to that?
We'll do the Barnet Boreham Wood, get them out of the way, and then we'll have a look at the tier system, because it'd be interesting to see that. Yeah.
Right, so we'll just quickly go back, see if I can get it up here at the moment. My computer seems to be very slow. So Bournemouth v Barnet then. Let's have a look. The North London derby. It was quite a similar kind of game to the Bromley v Woking game. Both finished 2-1. Of course, Bournemouth were in the lead for the entire game. Well, since they took the lead, of course. And I do think it was another goal through the run of play that Bournemouth managed to take the lead. They took the lead, and this is the thing about Bournemouth is the fact that you never really see them as the better side on the pitch in these sort of games. But what they are is they're clinical in front of goal, which in my opinion they are. Of course, they don't score too many, but when they have those chances, they are clinical in front of goal, like we saw. And also, they are the best defensive side in the division, as it states, with the amount of goals that they've conceded. I think Bournemouth went, like Bromley did, to spoil the game, which I think they did. I think they went there with the intention to stop Barnet from playing, which they exceeded, in my opinion, extremely well against Barnet. Stopped them from playing. Managed to get that early goal, and as soon as you had that early goal, that was the worst thing that could happen for Barnet. I actually remember saying when I was doing my preview of the game, I said, if Boreham would score first, then Barnet are in trouble, and they were. But not only to go 1-0 down at half-time, to concede a second just before half-time, on the stroke of half-time, was the worst possible half, to be honest. Being 2-0 down at home to Boreham Wood, who were the 4th best away side in the division, and the best defensive side in the division, you sort of knew at half time that it was going to be a very, very difficult ask and big ask for Barnet to get back into that game, wasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And yeah, I think what was it Luke Garrard said at the end of the game was that the goal they conceded the other night against Barnet was the first goal they conceded off a corner all season. So hats off to Barnet, they were able to do that. That just goes to show how resolutely defensive Boreham Wood can be, to not give a goal away that all season off a corner until the playoff game. And I think you're right, to go 2-0 down, and Dean Brennan said that in his press conference afterwards on the television. He said, look, you cannot afford to give someone like Boreham Wood a 2-0 lead. It's exactly what they want. You could play all the football in the world against Boreham Wood. They'll keep the ball out of their goal. And that's what happened. I mean, the only piece of sort of chink of light for Barnet was how early they scored in that second half. And at 2-1, that's always a nervy scoreline for any football team. So, Barnet certainly put that press on. But with Ashmore in goal playing like he did, and with that resolute defence that Boreham would have, there was only really going to be one winner. And I don't think Barnet gave their best showing on the night. And I think they had their strongest team out, or near enough their strongest team that they could play. They didn't do themselves justice, because I certainly think they're the most improved team in this league. It pains me to say it, being a Wealdstone fan, but to be 24 points better off in year on year is an achievement, and they've just not been able to follow it up when it matters most on a Tuesday night. So unlucky to them. I think they'll be as strong next year, and Boreham Wood is certainly going to give it a go on Sunday.
I think one positive spark in that Barnet side that I thought was Carnu, who played on the wing. I thought he was one of the only players that I thought, he's played well tonight. And he was the only real danger, I think, that caused Boreham Wood any problems. Barnet got that goal to get him back in the game. And it was a perfect start to the half, getting an early goal. You've still got 40 minutes or so to get back in the game. It wasn't out of the question at that point, but it was still, even with getting that goal, it was still a big ask to get back in the game, because Boreham Wood are such a good defensive side, and you could see how organised they were. Barnet, I don't think were direct enough, and I thought Boreham Wood were. They weren't direct enough. I think players like Harry Pritchard, although he scored, I don't think got on the ball enough. Kabamba was nowhere for the full 90 minutes. The only time I thought in the second half where Barnet looked dangerous as such, in any sort of danger, I think Boreham Wood was set pieces. And when they did have those set pieces, the likes of Kabamba and Okimo, the big players that you'd be expecting to hopefully get that equaliser, they were nowhere to be seen. And I think you have to give the Boreham Wood defence a lot of credit for that. But the one player that I thought caused Boreham Wood any danger was definitely Carnu. Apart from him, I thought Barnet had enough night, to be honest.
Yeah, they did without a doubt. But a bit like Woking, they've got in the playoffs, probably expected to. That was what I think Barnet were probably aiming for playoffs. They've done what they aim to do. They've got something to build on if they keep the majority of that squad, and Dean Brennan builds on that. I don't know how many of those might get poached by teams slightly higher up the football pyramid, or how many he's looking to replace. But I think they'll do all right, and both those teams will bounce back from this. So, it won't live long in the memory. They'll learn from it. You always hear managers say you learn more from a loss than you do a win, and you learn more from those sorts of experiences. So if those squads can stay together, they don't want to have that feeling again this time next year. They'll do everything in their power to go that one step further. So, two good teams to stay in the National League in Woking and Barnet, especially from my perspective, being sort of Wealdstone fan. They're good local games for us to have a home and away. So, from our point of view, not disappointed on that front. But they'll come again next year. They'll be strong. But I think they'll both be disappointed overall with their showings this week.
I think Woking, like I've mentioned, I think they're the side that I think will bounce back next season. But Barnet, I am not too sure about, because they don't have the biggest budget in the division. They don't have the biggest squad. And if bigger teams come calling, then Barnet are going to lose their players. And I think the likes of Carnu, Kabamba, Pritchard, even these key players for them, I think are going to struggle to keep, unfortunately. And I think something they won't want to be doing is looking at the Halifax and the Solihulls, who had great seasons the previous seasons and haven't lived up to those expectations this season. Of course, it's been a relatively good end to the year for Halifax, but league-wise, we haven't managed to get into the playoffs. And Barnet will be wanting to replicate this next season and go one step further and potentially two steps further and get into the Football League. That's something that Barnet will be wanting to do. But if they can keep Dean Brennan, they can recruit well, I think it's inevitable that they're going to lose some of the key players, in my opinion, that is. If they can recruit well, like I've mentioned, I think Barnet could be up there once again. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do recruit in the summer. And yeah, commiserations to Barnet once again. You've had a great season. But I think I'm happy to see that you're in the National League again next season, because it's another away day that I do enjoy for myself. But Bournemouth, it's going to be interesting to see if they can cause an upset against Notts County. Now, we'll come back to the playoffs very, very soon. Get your questions in, guys, about the league as a whole. I know a lot of people have been talking about the games, giving their opinions. I've had a few more people that are tuning in and getting their thoughts. But just get your general questions in about your club. It can be anything for next season, best players, anything to do with National League or anything to do with football in general, and we'll try answer those if you want. So I'm just going to try share my screen now to get this tier list, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. If I can find it, let me have a look. There we go. Share screen. So I created a tier list. If it's going to load in a second, I think. There we go. So I created a tier list, and I thought myself and Paul could rank how teams have done this season, how the campaigns have gone. Are you up for doing this then, Paul?
Yeah, let's go. This will prove.
Get your thoughts in as well, in the live chat as well, how you feel your club has performed this season. Has it lived up to expectations? So we'll start with York City then. I think, to start things off, this is just my opinion. I don't think it's been a year to forget, but I did expect more from them, to be honest. For me, I'd say poor season. What would you put them higher? Maybe, I don't know.
No, I would say it's been a poor season. I think off the field, it's probably one to forget, but on the field, it's just been a poor season. They've managed to sort of stay stable enough and buoyant enough to not sort of go down. They did quite well in the trophy. So no, yeah, I think it's a poor season for the size of that club. Not quite a forget about it.
Yeah, they managed to survive, which is good, and I think will be good for next season. They can hopefully, from their perspective, build off that now. They're surviving the National League, but the size of that club and how the season started, I'd be expecting them to have been, higher mid-table. That's how I'd be expecting them. Gateshead, then, where do you feel Gateshead should be?
To be fair, they've got to be up there as probably a brilliant season for them. To survive in the National League after losing Langstaff and Scott, and to get to the FA Trophy final. Any fan at the beginning of the season who follows Gateshead would have gone, "I will take that all day long." So I think theirs is a brilliant season.
For me, I'd either be good or brilliant. I'm between, because I look at some of the other clubs, like, for example, some clubs who've certainly overachieved, which I think Gateshead have this season, and I think, can I comparing with them? But then other areas, I think getting to the FA Trophy final is massive for them. It's a massive boost for them getting to Wembley, and then to also have a higher mid-table finish as well for Gateshead is a brilliant finish for them, considering it's their first season back in the National League. So yeah, we'll go and put them in a brilliant season then. Aldershot then. Now, this has just been my initial opinion. I'd be putting them in poor, maybe average. It's either poor or average. That'd be my two. Where would you put them?
No, they got to be down as poor. They're on to their third manager of the season. Survived by the skin of their teeth. Okay, they sold Effie Young towards the end, but yeah, listen, that's a poor, not quite a forget about it, because I think if they'd been relegated, that probably would have dropped them into there. But yeah, I mean, from Aldershot's perspective, that is a poor season. I don't think they're going to expect to be challenging for titles and everything else, but you'd like to think they would think they're going to be halfway, if not pushing on the doors and knocking on the doors of the playoffs. So, they might get a bit more stability now. They've got Tommy Widrington in some for the summer for their recruitment and pre-season. It didn't work out with Bowlesy and then Ross McNeely. So, I think they've got an experienced manager in there. Give them a bit of cash, give them a bit of time, and they will improve. But it's been poor from this season.
I think Aldershot, being a former Football League side, you'd be expecting them to be, like you've mentioned, higher mid-table, knocking on the doors of the playoffs. And year on year, they failed to do that. And they're always surviving just, they could have easily been dragged into that relegation zone in the last couple of games, but they always seem to just have enough to survive. But I don't think Aldershot fans are happy with just surviving in the National League. They want to be back in the Football League and be knocking on the door in the playoffs. So I'd say a poor season for them. Altrincham then. Now, for me, it'd be either be good season or average season. I think going full time, I think was always a big step. I think they've had a good season, to be fair. I think they've done well to, sort of replace those players that they lost in January. But what I will say as well is they haven't done anything, in my opinion, that I didn't expect them to. I expected them to finish mid-table this season. I think going full time, thought they attracted players well. I think overall it's been an okay season. I think if they'd have made the FA Trophy final, I might have put them higher up. What would your opinion be? Would you disagree or agree with that?
No, I think I'd go with average campaign. They were far too inconsistent to be anything other than an average. They had periods where they were very good, periods where they were poor. Yes, they've had that expectation of going full time and that real change around the squad. They stuck with Phil Parkinson, which I think is the right idea. He clearly knows the club and likes the club, and they're a brilliant football club off the field, and they're certainly going places with the right structure and the ethos. But a bit like Woking going full time, would they expect to be pushing up? I don't know, but I think that's a bang average season for Alty, to be fair. So close to beating you guys in the FA Trophy, that didn't happen. So close to getting in the playoffs at certain times, that didn't happen. So, apart from maybe that off the field having that model of full time, which has been good for them going forward, I think actually the season's been sort of bang average for them.
So Barnet then, where would you put them?
Barnet have had a good season. The turnaround, you think, from last year, where we know Trevor who sort of blogs for Barnet and has sort of suggested over the last couple of years that they have players that haven't really wanted to represent the club and don't really get the club and everything else like that. To turn it around and get them into the playoffs, they've had a good season. No two ways about that. Again, it pains me to say it, being that local rival, but credit where credit is due. Fair play to them. Getting that playoffs, I think is a good season for Barnet, and they'll build on that for next year.
I'd be sort of looking at brilliant. Me on a personal note, I'd be looking at brilliant just because of the budget that they have compared to other clubs. We'll stick with good though, but I do think that they've done very, very good this season. Barnet, of course, 5th place finish. I don't think many people expected them to do that. Boreham Wood then, where would you be placing them?
Well, theirs has got to be good to brilliant, right? Yeah, good to brilliant. Similar to Barnet, they don't have the biggest budgets, I don't believe. They certainly don't have the biggest crowds. Yes, they're underpinned by their academy and their association with Arsenal, and Danny Hunter's very good at those commercial partnerships that he's got over the years, and that's really kept them stable. But I think Boreham were consistently doing well in cup competitions over the last couple of years, and again knocking on that door and getting into that semi-final on Sunday. It's got to be up there with a good to brilliant. Whichever one. I would probably stick with the good, to be fair.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't. I don't think I could put Barnet in good and then not put Boreham Wood above.
Yeah.
It depends if we're doing it based off the playoffs, because for me, I think we should forget that the playoffs have happened at the moment and just base it off the league, just because I think it's hard to tell. But yeah, I'd be saying good for both of those clubs. Chesterfield then, I think
they've had a good average to good season. again, a bit like Altrincham, they showed a massive level of inconsistency, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think what was good about them was they stuck with Paul Cook. He clearly stuck with them. They rolled the dice a little bit in January and got that spine of players that were required, and from then they've kicked on. And we'll see how that really pans out on Sunday. But to stay consistently in that top 4 after looking like they were going to drop out of it, is it a good season? I would suggest it's probably a good season because they're the best of the rest after Wrexham and Notts County, and I don't think they would have been kidding themselves if they thought they'd be any better than those two.
Do you think with the budget that they have, because I know for a fact that on a financial note, they are competing with Notts County on a financial note, that they can compete with those. We saw some of the players that they brought through the season, and the season started, they were top of the league for the first 8 or 9 games, we have to remember, but then slipped off, and then it didn't seem to be working. It felt like they had no plan B, and then they brought in this new batch of players in McCallum, Dallas, Colclough, making them like they've reborn this season, and they've become a real force for this last 10 games of the season, although they have been slightly inconsistent too. But I think obviously snatching that third place finish is good. Like you mentioned, they've been best of the rest, but placement wise, I'd say it's hard. Average or good. It's between those two because they have been good this season. I have to say that, but you look at them, they haven't done anything that I thought they wouldn't do. I expected them to be in the top 3. I expected them to be probably competing with Notts and Wrexham more, but honestly, I think that'd be some job to be able to compete with them. For me, I'd say average.
Go on then. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. We'll go to Bromley then.
Well, theirs has got to be a good season because I don't think there's an unrealistic expectation that they'll be in the playoffs. They've always been in there the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously, they got to the trophy final in the recent past. I think they've had a good season, and it's continuing obviously on Sunday. There's not much more you can say about that. They've sort of flown under the radar that little bit. We've talked about Chesterfield and Wrexham and Notts all season, and Barnet having such a massively improved campaign. Bromley and the Borough Woods as well just sort of go along their business and do very well at what they are. And again, it's another good season from Andy Woodman, and his recruitment and his model around young players seems to be working. If he can continue that next year, another year's experience for all those lads, they're only going to be stronger when it comes to the 2023-24 campaign.
I always expect Bromley to be in the top 10. So if they were in the top 10, I'd say average. But you always know that they'll be somewhere around the playoffs. They'll either be just outside or they might sneak in. And they've done that. And I think with the budget that they have compared to some of the other clubs, I totally agree with you when you say good season. I think these 3 clubs should be made of an example of a great clubs that do things the right way off the field. None of the 3 have big budgets, but I tell you what they do. They recruit well. They have a strong squad. And this Bromley and Boreham Wood side, over the last couple of seasons, it's a very similar side. You only ever see in the summer 1 or 2 or maybe 3 players come in. They might lose the odd player, but I looked at that Boreham Wood side the other night, the lineup against Barnet, and I remember the lineup against Halifax in the playoffs, which is probably 3 or 4 years ago now. And I remember that lineup. And there were at least 4 or 5 players that were still in the starting lineup, and a fair few that were on the bench as well. And this is something that I do applaud with Luke Garrard and the likes of Andy Woodman, is they keep squads together in the summer and they recruit well, but don't go overboard with their recruitment, if that makes sense. Dagenham then. Dagenham. An interesting one to talk about.
Poor.
Definitely poor.
Poor at best. I'm not sure it's quite a forget about it because they did survive. They have made the change in management, brought Ben Strevens in, an ex-Daggers player. Clearly wasn't working under Darryl McMahon. Brought Effie Young in. Have shipped a few players out just before this season's finished. So clearly they've got some sort of idea of what they want going into the summer. But yeah, on the whole, so inconsistent that there's as a Daggers fan, they've got to be really disappointed with what's happened down there at their stadium this season. It's a really poor show from them.
I think it's so disappointing because year on year with Dagenham, we know that they have quite a considerable good budget in this division. We always think of Dagenham, they need to finally knock on the doors and get into the playoffs. Last season, they finished 8th. Had a good end to the season. This season, they finished even lower than that. So it feels like they're taking steps backwards than taking steps forward to try and regain their Football League status. So I have to say, from Dagenham, it's certainly been a poor season. They should be competing with the playoffs, and they need to look, like I've mentioned, at your Barnets, your Bournemouths, your Bromleys, especially your Bromleys and Bournemouth, who consistently, year on year, are competing for the playoffs. Dagenham are just way too inconsistent. And yeah, there's much more I can say about them. Next season, they have to get into the playoffs. Every year we always say that they need to get in, but next season they need to start competing at the top. Like, in my opinion, they should be. Dorking, then, I think I'll just put my opinion on this first. It's either good or brilliant season. I'd be sort of going towards brilliant season. But then I think for Dorking standards of getting promoted season on season, obviously they've just sort of stabilised, haven't they, this season in the National League? But can you really ask too much more than that? I think you can't really have asked Dorking to do any more than what they have done. They've, in the end, been comfortable from relegation this season. In the end, Dorking have got over 50 points this season in their first season in the National League. I can't really see them doing any better, to be honest, with that squad. And I think next season they'll hopefully be wanting to improve again. Would you be putting brilliant or would you be putting good?
No, I'll be putting brilliant in there. And a little bit like Gay said, any team that comes up from the National League South or North and is able to, come in and hold their own has got to be brilliant. Because when you look at the likes of the teams that are in there, they're part-time. I can't imagine Mark White has the smallest budget for a part-time model. He clearly is an ambitious owner stroke manager. They play quite a good brand of football, quite an exciting brand of football. But to be fair to them, Mark White and his team, they looked around and went, well, if we carry on playing like we do, we'll score one more than you. They were going to go down. So to adapt how they played, to then go into the January transfer window and he backed himself and went and got a couple of lads from Crawley Town and brought Jason Pryor back from Havant and Waterlooville, who was an ex-Dorking favourite. He's done really well. And that back end of that season, when the pressure was on, when we look at the likes of Yeovil and you look at the likes of Scunthorpe, look at the likes of Solihull, who almost threw the towel in for a number of different reasons, Dorking went the other way and they went, we ain't going to get relegated. Let's go and push on. So a brilliant season for them. Will they back it up? That second season syndrome, very, very difficult to know. But I know for a fact, like you do, Luke, and many who follow National League, Mark White is a sort of character and person who will do his very best to stay in that league. And he'll be not short of confident of saying, we can get in the playoffs and get promoted in the next few years. That's the type of person he is. So they've had a brilliant season. So fair play to them.
I can't repeat this because obviously it's on the podcast. We like to be friendly here. But what I will say is I know young Toby, who's a Dorking fan, great vlogger, to be fair. He did his own, they had their own after party, Dorking Wanderers, after the season, which is another thing why I think you have to admire Mark White. He said a few words at the award ceremony, and he said at the start of the season, basically alliterating what we've just said, where this season we wanted to stabilise, just be comfortable in the division, get a feel for it. Next season we're going to push on and win the effing thing. I wouldn't go that far saying that he's going to win the division, but he's that sort of character where he could take Dorking as far as he wanted, to be honest, and I cannot see him failing next season. I think Dorking, they'll be hoping to make further steps moving forward. I think recruitment-wise as well is going to be key, keeping this squad together, which I think they can do. And next season, I don't see any reason why not. with the players that they have, and adding to that, why they can't be competing at the top end of the table. They're just a bit similar to Dagenham, but more in a positive light. They're a bit too inconsistent for their own liking. To be fair, Dorking, they can beat the likes of Notts County at their place, but can struggle to beat some of the more weaker teams in the division this season. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Dorking react next season, see how they set up, if they live up to the expectations of another great season, or if they do have that second season syndrome, because there's always that feeling with your Gateshead, your Dorkings next season. Will it catch up to them at the bottom of the league table, and they might slip down towards the bottom end of the table? Moving on, then we'll go to Eastleigh. I'll just put this out there. In my opinion, I'd be saying average, but I'd say average in my opinion. What would you say? Good, maybe. I don't know. What's your opinion?
I think it started off pretty average, and it finished good. But overall, I think if you were going to have a season assessment, it's average. One of those other teams that sort of fly under the radar and just get on with it, and they've got a settled squad. I mean, what killed them was their away record at the early part of the season. They couldn't buy a win, could they? And I think if they picked up a few more points on the road, then we maybe would have been talking about them instead of Bromley this week. So, yeah, I mean, it's an average campaign for Eastleigh. They will be better next year. But they're, again, a very consistent top 10 side, aren't they? And they've come into the league off the National League South over the last few years, and they've sort of consolidated, and they've built slowly year on year. And I think you're right. It's just a little bit average. I think they probably would have expected that bit more out of their team. They're
the top half of good season. What I will say is, I know with my predictions, I put them all the way down in 19th, and I wasn't the only one who put them down there. I think there were a bit of talk about the ownership and the owner not having the best interests, but it's definitely, I think, boarding on towards good with Eastleigh. But I think towards the end of the season's the reason I put them in average. I'd be saying an average season, but I do think overall it's definitely between, because of previous seasons, and they've reacted well. But it's definitely either one, but I'd be going for average in my opinion. I think some will probably disagree with that. Halifax then.
We'll leave that to you, Luke. You decide.
I'm going to ask you first to see what your reaction would be, but okay,
I'll give you my assessment when I saw them. I thought you were the worst team I saw play in the National League at the time over the 3 seasons. I then came to the Shay and you drubbed us 5-0, and you've got to the FA Trophy final. So I would probably say again it's a bit of an inconsistency, but overall I think you've got to go with a good season.
I think the fact that you got to an FA Trophy final might sneak you in. No, I'm saying average. That's what I think. I'm being proper. Maybe I'm being proper negative there, but with Halifax, I think if you look overall this season, we've got to, and I don't usually want to, but you've got to remember when we're doing rankings like this, the bad times of the season, some of the worst performances, the positions that we've been in for the majority of the season. Yes, we've had a strong finish to the season, but we've also got to think of previous seasons. The last 3 years we've been 10th, where we were in the playoffs for the majority of the season. We finished, I think, 6th one season, the first season under Wild, and 4th. And then we've dropped all the way down to 11th and spent the majority of half the season in the bottom half of the table, with relegation potentially lingering over us as well. And if you look at that as a whole and some of the darker months in the season, I think it has got to be an average. I think if it wasn't for that FA Trophy win, Halifax would be there. If it wasn't for that FA Trophy win, but because of that, they've sort of rocketed into there. So I think I'm going to have to go in the middle and put them in average, because overall we haven't had the best season. We've gone backwards compared to where we've been. Yes, we've had an FA Trophy final, which, don't get me wrong, is brilliant. I'm glad we're there. But I do think overall it has been a bit of an average season. Very, very inconsistent. Would you be disagreeing with that? I know you mentioned
no.
This season.
No. I mean, you've seen them more than I have. As I say, I did say at the time, Halifax were poor at the beginning of the season when we played them, and change over a squad and manager. weren't particularly great at the shade, but were clinical, and from that point on, getting that semi-final win sort of really helped their confidence. And I think you're right. Overall, it's sort of they've gone from poor to good, so it averages out as an average season for them.
Yeah, we'll move on then to the next one then. Maidenhead. I'll just put this out there. I think average, in my opinion. Did the job, got safety. I think that's all you can ask for them, to be honest. Won't go overboard, but got the job done and got another league in the national.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything with all of these teams. What was the expectation of the management, the club, the fans? I think you're right. It could be classed as poor after their previous showings, but you got to consider the size of the club, the size of the fan base, possibly the size of their budget. Yeah, I think you're right. Going to average, they were looking like they could get relegated. They didn't, and as far as they're concerned, they'll go again next year.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think we have to remember that they are part-time. Of course, they've been in this season for a long time now, but every season, to be honest with them, it might sound a bit dull and boring, but the only real expectation is for them to survive in the National League for as long as they possibly can. Because I do think one season they are going to drop off. And we say this every season, it'll be the year where Maidenhead get relegated. But I do think there will be a time where Maidenhead will drop down to the National League South, or might even be North now, to be honest with how it's going. I think it still will be South. But yeah, I do think you can't really ask anything more of them. They haven't really done anything extraordinary, but they've survived, and I have to say I predict to them to go down, and they've proved me wrong, so I'd say average. Maidstone, it's a pretty easy one, isn't it, this?
Sticky in the bottom. Less said the better for Maidstone.
Bottom where they finished in the league, yeah.
Couldn't buy a win, sold their best players, a failed investment for an American investor. They're going back to the National League South after really dominating the year before. Not a lot more you can say about it. A really bad one for their Stones fans down there in Kent. Feel for them, but just weren't good enough.
It's a definition of a side that goes up and simply doesn't have the quality to survive in this division, which they haven't throughout the season. It's a very weird one to see how comfortably they won the National League South last season, and then to just fall apart this season and not just go down, but to go down in that fashion. They were by far the worst team in that division, to be honest. And they just lacked a lot of quality. And this will be the last we'll say on Maidstone for at least a year, where it wouldn't surprise me if they bounce back. But it's weird, isn't it? Our side can storm the league below and then come into the National League and be unable to compete. But I do think it's the difference between the National League South and the National League. I think the North, it's very different. And I don't think Maidstone have adapted like Dorking have, to be honest, although they won the league. Notts County, then, I think there's only one place for them, no matter what happens.
Yeah, top.
Yeah.
They would have won the league in every other National League season ever, apart from this one. So, brilliant brand of football, excellent players, a very good manager, excellent stadium. Selfishly, I'd like them to stay in the league. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised. I'll be very pleased for them if they exited back into the EFL.
Yeah, I'm in two minds. From a selfish point of view, I want them to stay down because I love speaking to their fans. They're an interesting club to cover. Always something going on there. It's a great away day. It's probably my favourite away day in the league, although we have lost there. It's definitely up there, Notts County, for being one of the best away days in the division. But I do feel for Notts fans this season. They've had a season where any other season in the National League they would have won the league title. Most any other division that's ever gone, the majority of the time they would have won the league title. Getting over 100 points and not getting promoted is criminal, to be honest. Yeah, you can't really ask anything else of them, to be honest. So there's only one place for them, and that's a brilliant season. Oldham, then. Now, for me, it's either poor season or average season. How would you opinion? What would your opinion be on it?
I would go with average. I think this is one of the clubs that will divide opinion. Their fan base will say it's really poor because they feel they should be back in the EFL 30 years ago in the Premier League, yada, 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 right? It's been average for them. I think it's been average for them because actually we, as fans of National League and having teams who we've seen playing the National League over the last few years or longer, appreciate how difficult this league is once you're in it to get out of it. Doesn't matter where you've come from, you know, be it the Premier League and down, you know, over the last few years. Our expectations of Oldham would have been that if they stay up, they're doing well. If they challenge the playoffs, they're doing very well. You know, there's not many teams that come down and go ping straight back up. There's always a bit of a basket case around them. I think it's been good for them that they've got their new ownership and they've got their ground back and they've got a bit of positivity. You know, they've released their retained list today. They had 37 professionals on their books. I mean, absolutely nuts. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of clearing out in the summer. They did what they had to do. They improved from being, you know, at one point it looked like they were going to go down. It was inconceivable to think Oldham were going to drop into regional football. They rallied. They did well. They trusted in David Unsworth. And it's been an average campaign at best for them.
I totally agree with what you were saying on, you know, Oldham fans probably expected more, but and I know someone's coming now and said he didn't expect more, but I understand what Oldham fans would probably say when you were saying that they'd expect more, but we knew all along that it's probably been a good season because people don't appreciate and understand how difficult this division is when sides come down. They came down in turmoil. Of course, they had that takeover. But the majority of the players for the first half of the season was the previous owners' players and weren't obviously the owners' players. I think that it's been it was definitely a difficult start to the campaign with the manager. But we've got to appreciate they've survived this season. You look at someone like Scunthorpe, who it's gone horribly wrong for this season, even with the takeover. And you've got to think of someone like Oldham, who had an average campaign, to be fair. I don't think I'd go overboard. I think I predicted them 12th. And they finished, I think, might have been, it was something like that. It might have been 12th, actually, this season. So for me, I think Oldham definitely been an average campaign for them. I think they've saved it. For 3/4 of the season, they were probably in par, but I think they've just climbed up to that average campaign, in my opinion. Right, we'll move on then to the next club, Scunthorpe. One place for them again.
Stick them next to Maidstone.
Yeah.
Absolutely tragic, you know, to see what happened. They came down in turmoil, more turmoil than Oldham. They managed to get new ownership like Oldham, probably a month or two too late to save them in this league. You know, again, they've released their retained list today, and the amount of players on short-term contracts and loan deals was just unbelievable. You know, they're going to really, really struggle to come straight back up from the north. You only got hope that they've got the manager in from Peterborough Sports, who's a winner. You know, he wouldn't have wanted to see them get relegated, but he was, you know, he stuck between a rock and a hard place. Really, there was no expectation to stay up. Yeah. They've just been they were poor. Yeah, when I saw them play down at the Vale, even then, sort of before Christmas, they are cooked. They were done. Literally, you know, they went 1-0 down against us, had no answers, and you just thought with new owner. 11 or 12 players they signed in a couple of weeks didn't work, and yeah, forget about it for them. And I'm sorry for the Scunny fans that have had to endure what they've endured this season.
They had a slight bounce when the takeover happened, and it didn't carry on like we probably were hoping, and Scunthorpe fans were hoping it would. It sort of stopped, and then they went back to the Scunthorpe for the first half of the season, and that's been the problem for them this season. A few people were saying Scunthorpe might go down again when they first came down, and their side, when you look at Oldham and you think, phew, I'm glad that isn't us now, because they're going into a National League North that's very, very competitive. It's more competitive than the National League South, a lot more, with some of the clubs in there. Kidderminster's in there. You've got the likes of Chester, who might not go up. You know, some massive clubs in that division. Hereford. Yeah, Hereford are in there as well. There's some really, really big clubs in there, and I can't see Scunthorpe coming straight back up, to be honest. So, yeah, it's certainly been one to forget for Scunthorpe, but we do hope to see Scunthorpe back in the National League very, very soon. Moving on to Solihull then. I've got an idea of where to put them. Where would you be putting them?
Poor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Poor season. You know, the expectation was that they were going to be knocking on the door of the playoffs. Very, very strong side. Got an excellent manager, Neil Ardley. I saw him last week. I was commentating for National League Stream for Wealdstone, and they were just they just didn't seem to want to play. Apart from Whelan in midfielder, they got on loan from Chesterfield, I think it is, isn't it? Tom Whelan, fully youngsters. Don't know whether money's been pulled or budgets have been pulled or whatever it was, but they looked like they were on the beach. And I don't throw that phrase around too keenly when it comes to end of season games for players, because I don't think players don't try, but they certainly look like that. They just, it's just a season to forget for them. They're just not in the forget about it because they haven't been relegated. Nothing's gone seriously wrong, but it's been really poor from them.
I do think it's been a poor season, to be honest. And they're the lower of those poor seasons because you've made a playoff final against Grimsby. You were 20 minutes away from gaining promotion to the Football League. I honestly thought with that recruitment in the summer, they kept the squad together, which is something that your Halifaxers haven't, and Halifax have still managed to finish higher above. It was virtually the same squad as last season. I think the only major, and I wouldn't even class this as a major loss, was Carl Hudlin in the summer, and he was only there. He wasn't really ever there, to be honest, at Solihull. He was only there for the big games in the playoffs, to be honest, Carl Hudlin. But they kept Sabara, they kept Dallas for the first half of the season. And I think the only reason Dallas left was because nothing was happening at Solihull. And then bringing in someone like Kelly, who'd scored 15 goals in the previous season, that was some front line. And I honestly thought that they were going to be up there, to be honest, at the start of the season. And I've been very, very disappointed with them considering the squad on offer. But they started well for the first 10, 15 games. But after that, it's been like relegation form for the last half of the season.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. It was interesting looking at Solihull, and when they lost Dallas, Sabara got injured. They lost another key player. It's gone out of my head who it was.
Was it Kelly? No, it might. I'm not sure, to be honest. It would have been.
They lost 2 or 3, including those couple of interventional players. And Neil Hardy's gone and recruited from the National League North and the National League South. So he hasn't gone EFL loans. He hasn't gone into the National League to pick up maybe squad players. The goalkeeper came, I think, from Guiseley. He was very good the other night at the Vale. But, as an example, so the recruitment they're making, they're having to make do with coming from leagues below, which is an awful difficult thing to do to supplement a squad because, like you said earlier, National League, regional, North and South, especially from the South, it's a big jump. Not so much from the North because there's quite a strong league, but that from that regional National League to the National League is a big, big jump in quality. So it was quite evident from when I was looking and researching around Solihull when doing that commentary was, looking at recruitment's not been quite as strong as we probably would have expected. And then to lose those key players as well, coupled with that, is there budget issues that Solihull, as the chairman or the board, decided that, listen, we're not going to be challenging again for a couple of years, so we're not going to put the money in. I know they don't get the biggest crowds, although they've got a great setup up there. It's been an interesting summer for them, I think, but certainly this season's one to sort of forget, although it has been poor.
It's not been a tragedy, to be honest, like some clubs. Could be a lot worse, and we'll be talking about a few more big clubs that have obviously got relegated very, very soon, but nothing significantly bad's happened. That's what they've got to think, and they've got to think next season, right, season's over now, have a good summer, and hopefully next season we'll be back in the playoffs where, with the financial backing that they have, I think they belong. Southend then, next. Very awkward one, I'd put this, because in my opinion, the squad on paper should definitely, it's hard to say, it's probably where they're at. It's probably 8th, 7th. It's somewhere in between there. I think I predicted them in the playoffs at the start of the season, but we didn't know what was around the corner. They finished just outside of the playoffs, had a good end to the season as well, almost climbed back into the playoffs, but they just ran out of games, unfortunately, for Southend this season. But with all the ownership issues that they've had, I think today someone announced that there's another winding up petition, and it's just becoming a vicious circle, isn't it, at Southend at the moment? It's just the same's happening time and time again. Is this the time the club's going to die or go bust, in fact? And it always seems to never happen. But the way they're going, unless they have a takeover, it's going to happen at some point. But on the football side of things, I think the players have done the fans proud this season, and it's just a bit unfortunate that they didn't make it into the playoffs. What would you be putting, brilliant or good? It's between those for me.
It is between those, and you're right. I mean, I'm sitting here reflecting on it. Kevin Mayer, Darren Curry, and all that squad of players they've got, they weren't paid. They lost one player who didn't get paid, Lapata, and I think he did his teammates an injustice there, doing what he did and disappearing. Off the field, forget about it. Obviously, on the field, I don't think you can go short of a brilliant season for them in relation to what they've had to do, purely on what they've had to do. Transfer embargoes, not getting paid, and still taking it to the last game of the season against Wealdstone and looking like they could still get in the playoffs and having, 5,000 or 6,000 people there turning up to support them. It's in those exceptional circumstances, they've had a brilliant season. I think you're right, Luke. If the ownership and the stability behind the scenes had been in place, you're probably looking at an average to good campaign. I wouldn't go short in these. So I say that they have been brilliant and they've served their supporter base. Not the football club, as the football club is shafting them. They've served their supporter base absolutely brilliantly. And fair play to Kevin Mayer and Darren Curry and all those players. And if none of them stay, I do not blame them.
We'll move on then, and this is a bit more easy, this one. Torquay United. Where are we sticking them then, Paul?
Where do you reckon? In the National League South, down there, forget about it. Absolutely horrific. The fan base down there, I don't know what to make of them. Half of them, most of them want Gary Johnson in place. Some don't want Gary Johnson in place. There was rumours that he was going to retire and he's now staying, and he said that they've had a good... I think he's based his opinions on the season over the last 5 or 6 games. Absolutely atrocious. To be a little bit like Solihull, challenging to get into the Football League in the last 2 years, to then get relegated back to regional football for a club of that size, it's horrific.
It's hard to put into words how bad this could be for Torquay United. We saw them when they were slipping down the leagues and they went to the National League South, not in the best circumstances. They've managed to make their way back up to the National League. And ever since then, it's been like, oh, brilliant. Torquay, they're moving forward to get back in the Football League. And they've been knocking on the door. I think the first couple of seasons, they were lower mid-table, which I think they were happy with. They had that outstanding season where they were so unfortunate not to win in the final. A lot of dodgy decisions went against them in that COVID year and lost in the final, which were very unfortunate. The following season was a bit like Halifax this season, where they were everywhere, realistically. Lower mid-table, higher mid-table. I think they finished like 12th at the end, something like that. And then you're thinking this campaign, right, we've had a season, like the season hangover after such a great year. This season, it's about getting back into those playoffs and competing with the bigger clubs once again. Not go even further down the league table and get relegated. Honestly, I think with the squad that they've got, when I look at it now, I think that it was definitely a sort of lower mid-table sort of squad. It was nowhere near good enough to compete for the playoffs when we look at it now, but it's all in hindsight that. I still don't think with the players that they've got, they should be where they're at. I thought it was good to see that they showed a lot of fight for the last couple of games, but they ran out of games, to be honest. But this could be damaging for Torquay, to be honest, and it's hard to say because they're a club that I like. I think all 3 of those clubs that we've talked about are fairly big non-league clubs. All 3 of them, I think, are wanting to be back in the Football League one day with the size of the fan bases. But it's just, it's awful for Torquay. When you look at Halifax, I think we complain about this season, or York complain about their season. You just have to look at Torquay and see where they've ended up and think, phew, at least we're not them at the moment, because they are in turmoil. Anything to add on that, or should we just move on?
Let's move on.
Let's move on to your club, and this is a little bit more upbeat. I think overall a good season, I'd say, for them. Maybe, I think probably because of the last 10 or so games, it'd probably be why I'd slip them down to a good season, because I think overall, Wealdstone, they've overachieved this season. A lot of people expected them to go down, although they had a good summer, in my opinion, with some of the players that they attracted. Had a great start to the season. for probably about 3/4 of the season, they were just outside of the playoff places. They were flirting with the playoffs. And then the last 10 or so games, they've sort of slipped off. And that might, I'm sure you'll have a lot more to say on that, but from an outsider, that might be to do with the amount of games that they've had to play and them being a part-time club compared to other sides. I'd say a good season, but obviously you'll know more than me being a Wealdstone fan.
Yes, difficult one. I'd still put it in brilliant, Luke. And from a selfish point of view, we expected them to finish fifth from bottom at the best, and stay up. Yes, we recruited well. Stuart Maynard and Matty did very well in recruiting what they did. Listen, you can't underestimate what they're doing on the resource levels they got, with the fan base they got, with the stadium they got, with the contact time they have with the players. And I know we harp on about it, and hence why I think Dorking are in there as well. Because we are coming up against some massive, massive teams in relation to what we are as Wealdstone. And that's the highest they've ever finished in their modern era. And yes, we were in the Gola League in the 80s and we won it, and we won the non-league double. But, in the recent history, when teams like Oldham were competing in the Premier League, Wealdstone were in the Ryman League Division 3. They were homeless. They didn't have a ground to play at. Fans were walking between grounds to raise money to survive. To think that they're into their fourth season in the National League. We topped it very briefly at the beginning of the season. We were in the playoffs for a brief period. We flirted with the playoffs. But one thing we never did was talk about, and anyone talked about, Wealdstone getting relegated. And for that, it's got to be a brilliant season. The only thing that would make it better is that we could be better in cup competitions and have a bit of fun in those.
Yeah.
But that could be to the detriment of the league position. I think you're right. The last 10 league games, apart from the Solihull win, were hard work. But these long seasons catch up. Saturday, Tuesday. We've got a lot of lads who do work full time, traveling to these places midweek. It's not an excuse. It's the reality of it. It was going to happen. But overall, I think it's been a brilliant season. And, the brand of football we play, the fans that travel away, the percentage of fans that go as of a home support, is well up there. We conducted ourselves well. We get very complimentary messages and tweets about how we sort of add to the atmosphere. So overall, as a football club, we are doing superbly well, and it's a great place to be. And I think next year, if we finish fifth from bottom, that's what we expect. So this is a brilliant season for us. So that's me selling the wheel. So people may have a different opinion.
To be honest, when you've put it like that, I can't really comment on it and argue against it. And of course, you know a lot more about your club than me, but you talk about the backstory and everything about that. I think you've got to put them in a brilliant season. And I'm not only just saying that, we've got to remember that they are part-time Wealdstone, and they certainly have overachieved this season. I just want to ask, though, what would your expectations be for Wealdstone next season? Would it be to consolidate once again and be in a similar position, or just to be safe in the National League? Or are you hoping in the future that they can make even further steps and be...
The expectation is to survive. That's what we've got to do. We're not ever going to go to a full-time model in the near future. Our budget isn't going to go through the roof. There's no investment around the corner from a wealthy individual or a group of investors. Not for the want of trying. It's just one of those things. So for us, a bit like the Maidenhead of this, that type of model is just improve year on year, get those better players, get more commercial revenue, improve the ground where we can in the limitations of what we got, and hope to make some good strides off the field that will then help the good strides on the field. But we still got to be realistic and say we want to stay in the National League, and we finished fifth from bottom. We've done very well. Don't get me wrong. We've had some real forget about it days, but over the season, it's been brilliant.
We'll move on then to the next club. So we go to Yeovil and leave these two for the end, because we don't want to be negative on this podcast. And Yeovil are very negative at the moment. They're sort of a replica to Torquay. They spent 3/4 of the season, to be fair, outside of the relegation zone, just above the relegation zone. They always threatened to sort of drop down. But I think we always thought that, oh no, they'll be fine. You know, I saw the amount of draws. I think they've got the most of draws in the division this season. It's something like 17 draws. You know, they've still been a fairly hard side to beat. I'd say, I think it were those last 10, 15 games that's cost them, because those draws, and we've been saying on the podcast, the problem with Yeovil is they need to turn those draws into wins. They don't beat sides around them, but they don't really lose to many sides in the division. Even the better sides in the division, they don't really lose to. But they need to start turning those draws into wins. We didn't say when we said that, go the other way and start turning those draws into defeats, which is what they have done. And it's been atrocious. It's been the worst possible end. Very similar to Torquay. It's been the worst possible situation for them going into the National League South under ownership issues. There's been this talk for the last couple of months about a takeover that apparently had happened. You know, Yeovil fans are saying we've got a club back, and we know about Yeovil's owner. He was highlighted in that Gate Money documentary that they did, how bad of an owner he is. And to have him still at the helm in the National League South isn't good for them at all. And I think even less buyers are going to be looking at Yeovil now with them dropping down. You know, we look at Scunthorpe and how far they've fallen. Well, Yeovil have had a similar path. They've been in the Championship before, like Scunthorpe, in recent years. I think, was it 2020?
10 years, 10 or 11 years ago, they were both in the Champ, weren't they?
Both in the Championship, and they've just fallen apart. I know when they first came down to the National League, it was their best season, but ever since then, they've just kept falling down the division. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can bounce back, but it's not been a good year for Yeovil, and it's not looking good, is it there?
No, the worst thing that could have happened in hindsight was that the SU Glovers and Matt Ugler trying to take the football club over. Because I don't know the ins and outs. Priestnall obviously isn't a very good owner. I don't know how awkward he would have been to deal with for Ugler and Saki to buy it. But for them to become custodians of the club and go about and recruit the way they recruited was nigh on horrific. It was awful, wasn't it? You know, they recruited players that weren't of the standard. They recruited players that weren't of the fitness levels, be it National League South or Ryman Premier, let alone National League, chucking them into a relegation battle. You know, Mark Cooper got them organised and made them hard to defend again, to beat. But they couldn't score goals, like we said. And when you can't score goals and all of a sudden the quality of your squad is made worse with a new ownership or potential new ownership, it was just catastrophic. And then to end the season and for him, for whatever reason, to turn around and say, this has been a difficult purchase, I'm on my way. So he's now not even going to take the club over. So he's left Priestnall, who no one wants, in the National League South with a decimated squad, some of them on 2-year contracts, and he's walked away. The whole thing is an absolute disgrace. And, you know, I feel for Yeovil fans. I feel for Mark Cooper. I feel for those 5 or 6 that he talks about regularly running on like fumes to want to do well for the football club.
Yeah.
When you've got the likes of Ugler and Saki and some of those lads that he signed are just like, they're just not good enough. The whole thing is just awful.
We know who those 5 or 6 are. We know there's the likes of Josh Staunton, who's been, I think, exceptional on the field and off the field, always done his interviews after the game, being honest with his interviews. You've got Grant Smith, who's easily been one of the, I would honestly go this far, say one of the contenders for the National League team of the season. I think Yeovil defensively have the 9th best defence in the division. It's something like that, or he's got something like the 9th best most clean sheets, which is, I think, extraordinary considering where Yeovil have finished this season. You know, I think Worthington, another player who's been one of the only half decent players going forward for Yeovil, but it certainly is a mess for Yeovil. But we'll move on from them now, and I do honestly hope that Yeovil can get back in the league at some point too. In our league, that is. Of course, the Football League is even further away now, if they was hoping for that. Let's go to, I'd probably say we'll go to the obvious one, which is Wrexham. And it will probably be the last time that we'll cover them on this podcast, unless next season I extend it to League Two, which I've not decided yet. But let's talk about them for the last time. For those who that are still tuning in, if they are any, that are still with us, it's obvious in it for this one. Brilliant. I think that's all. I think you agree with that.
All day long, yeah.
I'd call you a fool if you didn't agree with that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But people will say, well, they've had all the money, they've had all the resources, and this is what you expected from them. No matter how much money you have in this division, this is still a very, very difficult league. And not to only win the league title, but to win it to win with over 111 points or something like that is absolutely astonishing, to be honest. I have to say, Notts County have done well to keep up with them this season, but wow, Wrexham, fair play to them, even with the squad, to be so consistent throughout the season, to blow teams away. There isn't more you can really say on them than say it's a brilliant season. If it wasn't a brilliant season, then what do you expect them to do, to be honest? How do you see Wrexham this season?
No, they have been brilliant. I don't think it's anything we didn't expect. I think what we didn't expect them not to get promoted. What we didn't expect was them to get the amount of points they did, to have that battle with Notts County, to have owners who clearly have lots of cash and want to put it into the club, but seem to do it in the right manner and are respectful to the rest of the league. They've allowed exposure to the league, whether we like that or not. And all you can say is fair play to them, good luck in the EFL, and I can't see them staying in League Two too long. I think they're only going to be going one way. It will give us other fans more of a chance to see our teams compete. I'll be sorry to see them go on a selfish point of view, but good luck to them. I hope they're having a great time in their all-expenses trip in Vegas at the moment. Yeah. And I'm sure it's not the last that we've heard of them as football fans. So,
it does. I like Wrexham. To be fair, they've grown on me over the last season with the supporters, with them supporting the podcast as well, which they have done. But I have to say, I am fed up of seeing them on TalkSport all the time. You can't get away from it at the moment, can you? Fair play to them. If you're a Wrexham fan, you'll be loving it. But it's driving me crazy at the moment. And of course, we're all jealous. But good luck to Wrexham in the future. You've deserved it. 16-year wait is over now. I think it's 15 or 16 years to be honest. I think it's the same age as me. And that basically tells you the story, doesn't it? So fair play to Wrexham. We'll never be seeing you in the National League again. Maybe famous last words, but we won't be seeing you in this division for a very, very long time. I don't think it will be before long that you're competing in the Championship, and that dream of maybe being in the Premiership one day, I don't think it's unrealistic at the moment, the way that you're going. So, yeah, fair play to Wrexham and good luck next season. That's probably a load of Wrexham fans leaving the stream for the last time now. But we've got Woking then. These are an interesting one. I think budget-wise, I think is a little hidden, I think, to be fair. I do think that a lot of people don't realise how much money that they had in the summer to spend, which even with that money, we've talked about Wrexham, they've done very well to recruit the players that they have done. And I do think they've overachieved still. To almost get clinched third against the Chesterfield side says a lot. I am between good season and brilliant season. Where would you put them?
I'll put them in. I want to say good, but I think you're not far off brilliant. I think if they'd gone a bit further in the playoffs, and I know we were talking about leaving it at the end of, just talk about the season on the whole. I think they've had a good season.
I totally agree. Some Woking fans may say,
and no, listen, and if they felt that they should be in brilliant, I wouldn't argue against them, if that makes sense. I just
think budget-wise, I'd just say just out of it, especially. And I know we weren't going to talk about the playoffs and involve that, but it's hard not to. And I do think I think if they'd have got third, definitely brilliant.
Yeah.
They've got fourth, which it doesn't matter if you finish fourth or seventh, does it, in the playoffs?
No, really. I think you're right.
So I'd put them in a good season for me. I think they've got more money than what Bromley, Bournemouth, Barnet all have this season. They probably are up there, definitely, I'd say, fifth or sixth most wealthiest club in the division. So I'd say good season. Would you agree?
Yeah, all day long.
Fair enough. Right, that most leaves that to a close. We've spent a very long time on that, but that's our opinions on every team's season. Of course, people will disagree with that. It's just our opinions. Let's just be honest. We've basically just gave our overview of each team and how they've performed, what their expectations were at the start of the season. Have they reached those? Have they exceeded those? And this is our opinion. So we'll bring that to a close. We've spent a long time on that. We'll read the live chat. So get your questions in for the Q&A. I know it's been very busy as we've talked through that and we haven't really had a look at it. So we'll try to get through all of everyone's opinions and see what people have been saying then. If I can get it up here. It was there. We've both had Halifax and Wealdstone both should be pushing for the playoffs next season. No excuses. That's a big call. Halifax, I'd say yes. Paul's will probably disagree with you on that with Wealdstone.
We would love to, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, would love to, but I wouldn't expect them to. But from the outside fan base, I can see why they would say that on what we've shown this season.
It's sort of the growth season on season, isn't it? I think everyone thinks next season you've got to go one step further, and that would be the next step for Wealdstone. But it's always difficult season on season when it gets stronger and stronger, which, of course, we've lost to Wrexham and maybe a Notts County or Chesterfield or Bromley or Bournemouth. But teams are coming down. Big clubs are coming up too. Fylde, they're a wealthy club. We've all got to compete with those. So I'd say Halifax definitely. Wealdstone, it's all about opinion. Boringwood was decent, to be fair. Yeah, Paul, I don't know if you tuned into the stream the other night, but everyone seems to be using the term Boringwood for Bournemouth now on the streams. Even myself, I think I used it. Chesterfield won. Bromley, 2. Big call, that one. As a Maidstone fan, I'd rather not speak. That's on his opinion. When Wrexham get into the top 3 next season in League 2 or the playoffs, Paul, I think it's an easy answer, to be honest, with that squad. I think title, maybe.
They're only going to add to it, aren't they? And they are going to have footballers falling over themselves to want to join that football club.
Yeah.
Dropping from League. But now that players drop from League 1 to play in the National League, you're going to have players dropping from the League 1 to go and play in the League 2. Yeah, Elliott Lee coming from the Championship. Yeah, the talk of Gareth Bale coming back, whether that may happen. Yeah, Hal Robson-Kanu said he'd go and play.
He won't even ask. He was begging to join.
He'll go and play. They will be batting footballers away. What Phil Parkinson's got to do and his directors of football, whoever he has in charge there, is when they recruit is to make sure it's not detrimental to that squad they've already got and maybe do a Chelsea of the lower leagues and buy so many players and not know what their best team is and it all falls to ratchet. So I think you're right. I think they will get promoted next year. They've got an awful lot of money, an awful lot of social power, media power. They will just keep going. I'll be very surprised if they don't.
They're well run. We talk about money, but they're well run as well with the players that they're recruiting, to be fair. I think when I look at the players that they've got, I find it difficult to see where do they need improvements for next season. I can't see players coming in and instantly getting in the team to replace these players because that squad, I think, can win the division next season. We've seen Stockport had a slow start to the season, but now they're the favourites to get promoted through the playoffs, aren't they? So I can't see why Wrexham can't get promoted next season. As a Chesterfield fan, I think we've had a good season. If it was 2021 previous, we would have won. Title on the points we are on. We are the Shaman. Who the F are you? I am taking that brilliant choice. Jim's coming as a Halifax fan. Hi, Luke. A bit of a subject, but bring on Wembley and the mighty Shaman. Can't wait. Come on, Shaman. Yeah, it's certainly going to be a good day out for both set of supporters, that one, and a good end to the season. And someone like you, Jim, who goes everywhere, deserves that for next season. I'm sure you'll be struggling, won't you, with no football at the moment. I am at the John Smith Stadium. Nice to know. We don't talk about Huddersfield. Chesterfield to win the league next season and Oldham in the top 3 in the league next season. That's a question that I wanted to ask you. At the moment, let's say as the favourites are predicting, Notts or Chesterfield go up, so don't mention them. Who do you see who's still in this division next season, on the sides that have come down or come up, being strong next season? For me, one of the clubs would definitely be Oldham that I've been putting up.
Oldham, I think Hartlepool in a strange sort of way, because they've been here only a couple of years ago. Yes, they've got, again, ownership problems. Is it Mr. Singh who owns it? It's put it up for sale. They've got Askey still in charge from York. Oh, I can't see Rochdale doing too much coming down.
Yeah, I think they'll do it in Oldham. Like lower mid-table.
Oldham should do better. Barnet should still do okay. You'd like to think Woking will improve now they're full-time. God, it's so, you know what, Luke, it's so difficult.
Halifax, I think they're going to be,
Halifax, Halifax, Dagenham, these teams have just got to show a bit more consistency. That's what it all boils down to, showing a bit more consistency to get into and around that playoffs. But it's certainly going to be more open. If we lose Chesterfield, Notts and Wrexham, it's going to be way more. It's going to be way more open, I think.
Every silver lining, I would say, to be fair, with that, I think with obviously sides going up next season, I think, definitely Halifax and Solihull, I'd be expecting them to be strong next season. Dagenham, we say that every season and they never do. They fail to disappoint. I could even see Fylde. I think they could be strong. You know, they know this division. I think next season, Chester,
they'll have a big budget, won't they? They'll be full time. So I think they'll get in amongst it.
Next, we've got our budget isn't actually that big, mate. We are owned by a charity. Yeah, I know you're owned by the Chesterfield Trust, aren't you? But obviously, with the support base that you have, it does generate a lot of money. Top teams should go above.
I was going to say, look, it's quite interesting, right? Because you hear fans across the board all talk about their team not having the biggest budget and doing well on the budget they have. You hear all other fans saying, well, everyone else has got a great budget. Our budget.
Say about Halifax,
we don't truly know what the budgets are. We kind of know what players might be getting paid. But, you know, we all like to think that our teams don't have the greatest budget. And I think that just helps us have that sort of opinion of our team going, aren't we doing so well because we don't spend a lot of money? The reality of it is, I think these teams probably spend more money than we realise. I don't know for sure. I have no inside information, but I just get that feeling where and it's just that whole tribalism. You know, my team don't spend any money. They haven't got a great budget. So it's interesting how we all see it differently from our points of view as our football clubs.
We know for a fact that I know Wealdstone are one of the sides that obviously won't have the biggest budgets, but like you mentioned, I know like Halifax, we always say, every season we don't have much of a budget, but I think with the players that we attracted in the summer, I think we're definitely probably mid-table, top half, probably where our position is at the moment. I'd probably say that's where our budget is, but we all try to predict, don't we, how much money we have in the club.
Of course, yeah.
Looking at what happened to Southend today, you have to say they've had a good season with off-pitch problems. Maidstone had a very poor season for them. Wrexham AFC did well, and good show so far. Thank you for that. Wrexham, best team ever from National League, dropped 2 points all season at home, scored four at Championship Coventry, and a minute away from beating now Premiership Sheffield United in men's season. What a future. Yeah, it's going to be good to see how they go. It's 3 teams to go up next season in the league. There's been talk about that, but still not been confirmed. Southend United fan here. Today it's announced we have yet another winding up order from HMRC late this month. Yeah, we do hope that once again, I mentioned it was a vicious cycle. I'll repeat it again, but we do hope that you can find some solution for your situation, and let's hope that someone can take you over soon. If not fail to go up, will they be able to keep their best players? We've talked about that, and we've said I'd say unlikely to keep the likes of Langstaff. Main problems we've made this season, too many useless loans that can't adapt to the team fast enough. We've not had a consistent 11 since last season when the squad was able to gel and do well. I think Dorking will just get stronger for me. They are attracting new sponsorship, and I feel they are going places. We've already started signing some good players, so hoping we can bounce back as soon as possible. Jim said Chris Millington has done okay for me, Luke, especially if rumours are true. Wasn't expected at all that much this season, to be fair, because of the complete turmoil we were in just before the season with very poor signings and no backroom staff. I thought they'd be in with a shout of staying up after the Wealdstone home game.
Yeah, Scunthorpe. Yeah, I mean, Scunthorpe dropped Wealdstone 4-1, and I think probably played the best they played all season against Wealdstone. Yeah. So, when I said that they've had a forget it season, they have, and that's no bitterness because they beat us 4-1. They were much better than us on the day, and fair play to them. That could have been the catalyst, but they just didn't show that consistency enough. So
No.
I'm sorry to see him go. I never went myself, and I would have liked to have visited. So one for me to wait on for the next few years.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be back soon enough, but it's definitely going to be difficult for them. As soon as we signed Dallas, they basically said they're not bothered about playoffs. Yeah, I think
you're right.
Yeah. And then we've got, can't wait to visit Wealdstone's clubhouse. It's a beauty. Do you agree with that, Paul?
It's certainly different. It's certainly unique. It serves a purpose, and it'd be great to see the Halifax fans down prior to the FA Trophy final. Yeah. We do it every year as a bit of a fundraiser for the football club. The supporters club put on a barbecue, open the bar, and we host a team that's playing at Wembley. So we've had the likes of Sunderland, Wrexham, Manchester City, Manchester United, Newcastle, I think in the past, and now we've got you guys coming down. So, yeah, Jim, it would be great to see you, and I hope you enjoy your pre-match visit to the Vale.
On the day of the game, then?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be one of the coaches going down then.
Yeah, we allow we allow people to park for free at the football club. All we ask is that they buy a beer and a burger, which generally most of them do. We're a 10-minute walk from the tube station, which is 2 stops from Wembley, so we're ideal.
Yeah, it sounds good. Then it's great when clubs do stuff like that. Someone put, what team still in play have the biggest injury concerns in the playoffs? I think you mean probably Boreham would, because of the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I think you're having your main goalkeeper, who, in my opinion, alongside Sam Johnson, and I'd probably go as far down as Grant Smith, and Laurie Walker as well. I'd put in that as well. That list, I'd probably say is the best goalkeeper in the division. And losing someone like him in the playoffs against Notts County, if he doesn't play, I think will be a big loss. Would you say Boreham would, or?
Yeah, but Boreham without doubt is a key position in goalkeeper, and he proved his worth the other night. Didn't Bromley lose one of their lads yesterday? Dennis, was it Dennis?
Yeah, Dennis, he was good for them as well. Yeah, Dennis, he might be
struggling, but they were able to replace him with Adam Marriott, who's got an awful lot of National League experience. So replacing Dennis with Marriott is going to be a lot easier than replacing Ashmore with a goalkeeper who's not played for Boreham Wood. So, yeah, I think Boreham Wood is the biggest challenge issue at the moment.
I'm just trying to think with I think someone mentioned that you can actually sign a goalkeeper now. Boreham Wood will be able to if they need to. But I think, replacing Dennis, I think will be easier, especially because I think, did both goals come after he was off, or was it just the one?
I think it was just the one. I think it was the winning goal, yeah.
Yeah. We've next got Wrexham in the playoffs in top 3 in League 2. Yeah, probably Boreham Wood and Bromley have the injury concerns. Yep. It's always the smaller clubs that have the injury concerns. We did in the playoffs last season, and that was our downfall. Our whole midfield wasn't fully fit, and that was the problem. Thanks, mate. I think that's a Wrexham fan. Not bothered about Torquay or Yeovil getting relegated. Right, Trent. And then we've had Luke, keep up the good work on YouTube from Wrexham. Thank you very much. Keep promoting the National League. Luke, love Wrexham. Thank you very much. Halifax will be top 7 next season, in my opinion. Let's hope so. Wrexham, we need to get top players. Foster for a year. Leighton, injury prone, are not for answer. Maybe keep Howard as a second keeper. And then we've had Luke, react to Dorking goal at Notts County and watch our kit man fall over. And then we've had, I hope they don't change the league to 3 up. Having only 2 created so much drama and made the last few seasons as great as they were. 2 up gives this league a point of difference. It certainly does, and this is the argument. I think I know Non-League Bible, he has this opinion. As I don't believe he supports Halifax, but I think he prefers the league as a whole. And he was mentioning that I want to keep it just 2 up. It makes it unique, and as the neutral, yeah, of course. But with the amount of big clubs in this division, we need more spaces to get these clubs promoted. So before we do wrap things up, as we've been going for quite a while, but with it being the last stream of the season, I thought, why not? Let's go for a bit longer. Let's have a look at the final playoff games, and we'll give some predictions as well. Keep your questions coming in. We'll answer those at the end once we've had a look at these games. Let's go back then and have a look at these. Where do you want to go first, Chesterfield or Bromley?
Yeah, Chesterfield, why don't we?
Chesterfield. Right, I'll be at this game. I'm happy to be at, and I wanted to get to one of them, and I'm going to manage to get to one of these this game. And I think it's certainly going to be a bit of a banana skin. I think both games are banana skins for Chesterfield and Notts County. Bromley are the side with on form. I think they're unbeaten in 10 games. They're the side with the momentum after winning in the playoffs, and Chesterfield wouldn't have played for 8 days. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chesterfield react to this. Would you be backing them?
I think I would back Chesterfield. They're going to have the majority of the support, obviously being at home. They haven't played for 8 days. I think that will help them rather than hinder. You know, they're a full-time side, so they're going to have that contact. I know Paul Cook was there last night at Woking, watching and scouting his opposition. Bromley will make it very, very difficult for them, without a shadow of a doubt. And they'll go in there with no fear. They'll go in there probably not expecting to win, if they're brutally honest, and they'll give it a good punt. But I just see Chesterfield, and when we talk about Notts County, just being that bit too strong for these guys on the day when it all matters. And I can see Chesterfield going through, and it's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be by a number of goals I wouldn't expect. I could be wrong. You know, I think Chesterfield's front three are just powerful, right? McCallum, Dallas, who else they got? Cole Clough, you know, and they're as resolute in defence as Bromley are. They've got some right lumps at the back, and they keep the ball out of the goal like they've scored a hat-trick. You know, they don't want to let goals in. So, yeah, Chesterfield for me. But fair play, Bromley will give it a go.
I forgot to do my poll for this game. I'll have a look at the Notts Bournemouth one, and then we'll come back to this game. But this is gonna be. I don't think it's easy to call this game, because I think, like I've mentioned, Bromley have the momentum in this game. They will do exactly what they did at Woking. I think Woking and Chesterfield both have similar styles, and they like to play on the front foot. They both like to play the nicer side of the game, easy on the eye to watch, where Bromley are this physical, industrial footballing side that I think will come to Chesterfield and try to stop them from playing, which I think won't play into Chesterfield's hands, where if a Woking went, I think it'd be a proper, open, probably more entertaining game on the football side of things. But I think this game screams physicality, and whoever's going to get the first goal will win. Well, I think if Chesterfield get the first goal, then they'll definitely win. It just depends if Bromley can keep them out, because they are a very, very good side. But I'd be backing Chesterfield in this one. I think it'll be a tight game. I'm going to go 2-1 to Chesterfield, in my opinion. What's your actual prediction?
Oh, blimey. Chesterfield will win by a goal. I would think the safe bet is a 2-1 win.
Same as me, then.
Yeah.
We'll have a look. I'm going to put a poll out now, and we'll have a look at the Notts v game. But I'll just quickly put a poll out. We'll see what everyone was saying for the Notts game, see who they were favouring. So get your last votes in quickly for that game. But yeah, I'm going to back Chesterfield in this one. It's going to be interesting to see if both Chesterfield and Notts can pack out Wembley if they both get there, which I don't think's out of the question, to be honest, of the size of both clubs. We'll have a look at this game then. I'll quickly put a poll in. We'll have a look at what people who are favouring. As you would expect, 76% of the voters we've had 76 votes, and 76% of the voters have said that Notts County will win, and 24% of the voters have said Bournemouth would win, as you would probably expect. So we'll look at this. Will be a bit more, I think, even, I'd say, this one from people. So we'll quickly get this up. Start a poll. I'll just get this prediction up, Paul. But what's your opinions heading into this game?
It's a clash of styles, without a shadow of a doubt. Notts will play great football, expansive football. They use the width. You know, they've got the the quality of Rodriguez and Bostock in the midfield. They've got good wing backs. Obviously, an excellent centre forward in Langstaff plus his sort of backups. Whereas Boreham will just try not to let goals in and try and play on the counter or be a bit more direct. They've got their own threat in Unlove up top. I can't, with 15,000 Notts County fans there, I can't see them not helping the team to get to Wembley. I think Boreham are they the only team that have beaten Notts County this season or not let a goal in against? I can't remember the stat that.
Notts County, the only Bromley and Boreham Wood are the two sides that have failed to be defeated by.
County. So Boreham would have got to hang on to that stat. Apart from their goalkeeper, which is a real worry, they're going to probably go in with a fully fit squad. I don't think even if they have to change Ashmore, that's going to do an awful lot of difference to their to how they play or how resolute they may or may not be. I just think Notts on the day, 15,500 people behind them at home. They've lost their chief executive in the last few weeks. It'll be a very emotional time for them. They're just gonna be too much for Boreham. But again, this is a really tight match to predict, and I think it will be by 1 or 2 goals in Notts County's favour. 3-1 to Notts County.
This will be a game, in my opinion, of attack v defence.
Oh yeah, all day long
for 90 minutes. It won't probably be the nicest game to watch, and it'll just be Notts need to score in 90 minutes. And once they get that goal, I think they'll be fine. But it's just don't do what Barnet did. I said before the Barnet game, the longer the game goes on, the more chance, no matter how well you're playing, the more chance Bournemouth would have of getting something. And it's the exact same situation. If it's 0-0 and we're heading into the second half, Notts need to get that goal as soon as possible, because if they don't, Boreham Wood are dangerous on the counter-attack. They don't score that many goals, but they've got the likes of Marsh, and I can't pronounce his name. I know I think his dad used to play as well at quite high level. Going for, I'm sure you'll be able to pronounce it, Paul. They tall striker scored the other night.
Or what? Unlove,
that's it. Yeah. Unlove. I know he's another danger man for them, been scoring a lot recently as well. So I do think it won't be an easy game. I think if we went to penalties, it's anyone's game. I think you've got to back someone like Notts in normal time, though. With the point margin between the two clubs, 15,500 there, like you've mentioned, you've got to be backing Notts County in this game. And I'd probably be going, I think I'm going to go 2-0 to Notts County. That'd be my prediction for this game. That's our predictions then, I think, for the games. Cheers to everyone that's tuned in tonight. We'll have a quick look at your final few questions, so get them in. It can be about anything to do with YouTube, anything to do with the National League. We'll have a look at what people have been saying. I know I haven't left it long, but I've had to be quite quick. We'll have a look at what people are saying. So at the moment, Chesterfield are winning with 67% favouring Chesterfield and 33% favouring Bromley. So it's a little bit more closer than the other prediction. Remember to get your final thoughts on that and get your final thoughts on the podcast. Let's have a quick look at the live chat and then we'll see what people are saying. Notts County, then Chesterfield are the best footballing teams in this division, but as well, no, that doesn't always win you games. Might be biased, but I think Bromley could snatch it on penalties. I think anything could happen in the playoffs. How would you rate these playoffs so far compared to the previous season? Because they certainly were special playoffs, and it's going to be hard to live up to those expectations. I don't think we got that in both games, in the early games, but I think now is the chance for some massive cup upsets, playoff.
Oh yeah, I mean the eliminators, you just got to grind it out and you get a result. It doesn't matter how you do it. You want to be playing in that semi-final on the Sunday against the better sides, if you like, finishing sort of second and third. I think the blockbuster will be the final. Whoever gets in it, I think Chesterfield Notts County is the premier one, the marquee one for all of us and BT Sport. But whoever gets in it will give it a good go. Playing at Wembley, one game from the EFL, a bit like the Championship playoff final games get into the Premier League. It's not up there in terms of the amount of money it's worth, but sort of where it leads you to and how desperate people are to get into the Football League, how clubs are desperate to get into the Premier. It's a massive game and it always generates a really, really good atmosphere. They leave it all out there on the pitch, don't they? There's no stone left unturned to try and get the win. And then you may have the drama of last-minute goals, penalty saves like we've seen in the past. So, yeah, I think you just had to get those midweek games out of the way. They're not always the most interesting. Sunday and then the final was definitely those worth looking at.
I'll be honest, I wasn't overly intrigued by those games when I was watching them. I thought they were quite poor quality. I don't think any of the sides showed the true potential, but in the playoffs, in those games especially, it's always going to be very cagey. Someone said 2-1 to Chesterfield, and then they've said 2-0 to Boreham Wood. Callum said, nice to see you coming to Chesterfield, mate. Dallas is on form, so hopefully he continues it. Yeah, now he's got a goal. I'm sure he'll do well in this playoff match as well. Let me know where all the Chesterfield fans will be before the game. We'll need to get some predictions and stuff. And we'll obviously, I do enjoy talking to National League supporters. So yeah, let us know where all the Chesterfield fans will be before the game. So we've already read that out, and I think we'll have a look at the poll, and then we'll probably wrap things up for the season, to be honest, because it is the last time. If it's refreshed, we'll have a look. See what people have been saying. Still 67% to Chesterfield at the moment. Everyone seems to be backing Chesterfield, as you probably would expect. That more or less wraps up the stream then. So thank you, Paul, not just for tonight, but for joining me throughout the season. Oh, don't add that, but thank you for joining me throughout the season.
It's been my pleasure, Luke. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Certainly makes me sort of work and learn about different players and teams as I've sort of watched National League every week. And I do hope that everyone that's tuned in has enjoyed our predictions and our knowledge and our opinion. And, all I would say, I've got an utmost respect for every sort of single fan in the National League and every single player and team. It's the best league in the country. And that, I'm probably being biased. And to be able to talk about it with you guys and all your listeners has been great fun, and I'm looking forward if you want me to sort of continue next season.
Of course, I could read out quickly the predictions league. Of course, we haven't been doing it for the last couple of weeks, but I did have the final results that came in.
Go on then.
By 4 points.
Oh, of course you did.
Yeah, on home turf. I will take that. To be fair, you'll have a full season hopefully next season. You'll have a full season next season to try win over. Of course, we've only been doing it for the last 10 games or so. But Paul, like always, it's been great to speak to you once again tonight, and sorry for keeping you.
No problem, mate. No problem.
But yeah, thank you to everyone that's tuned in once again. Someone said, are you going to do another stream after the final? Honestly, we'll have to see. I don't think so, to be honest. I think I'll be having a long break after that and trying to reflect on the season and see what I'm going to do next season. Huddersfield have just scored, damn it. But yeah, thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Thank you throughout the season. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you for the 23-24 campaign. Bye for now.